I love the blanket, by the way. The is that a
Yeah,
raccoon?
yeah. It's so great.
All right,
I was gonna it's a wearable blanket and I've been doing this for all my streams.
perfect.
There you
That's that's
go.
it. I love it.
It's awesome. Makes me
Amazing.
happy.
Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank podcast, the weekly show where members of Team MagicJank get together and we talk about the latest happenings in Magic the Gathering. And of course, we have Bloomburrow, which just released, so we're all neck deep in that, of course. And there is a new limited environment, so Headology has graced us with her presence. I'm very excited.
Graced.
Absolutely.
We're excited.
You have no idea.
Welcome. It's the limited episode. Let's go. These are my favorite.
Yarr.
All right. So yeah, we have Headology in the house. We also have Carlos, Steve Everett Jr. Welcome. Thank you both for being here.
Everybody.
This is great. All right. So if you have not been playing Bloomburrow, it is low to the ground creatures as far as the eye can see. And so I'm definitely curious. It's funny. I always think about some kind of preamble, but I think we should probably just jump right on into it. So
Yeah.
Bloomburrow Limited. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely got the sealed and draft tokens and did a handful, and it was interesting. So I'm curious, what are you guys' overall impressions of the format? Like if we start there, how are we feeling at this point?
I'm
I know we're only like a
Carlo go
weekend at
first.
this, so yeah.
I generally talk for a while.
Well, maybe we could kick it off this way.
Ooh, okay.
Because the question I typically get asked, like, you probably get asked this question all the time, like, what color do you think is the best in Bloomburrow Limited? And I had the opportunity to play all pre-release weekend, right? We played the early access or the streamer event on the Wednesday before pre-release. On Friday of pre-release week, I played in 2, and Saturday I played in 3, and Sunday I played in a 2-headed giant one with my buddy. And by far, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I think white is the best color in Bloomburrow Limited. Almost I think every deck I played white something. I just felt like the cards just were very strong and they synergized with all the other colors. Yeah, and I went 2-1 in 2 of them and 3-0 in the other 3. All with white base decks. So I would have to say just my experience so far has been white being the strongest color.
Okay.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. This
Yeah.
is like one of the
Take it away.
one of the major ones.
Moment. So yeah, what are your
this is one of
thoughts?
the major ones that people ask is like, is there a best color or best color pairing?
Mm-hmm.
And Bloomburrow is complicated for a lot of reasons to answer that question. So oftentimes you're going to have, with limited sets, you're going to have color pairings that have a particular theme. And Bloomburrow is no different. It has, as with Ravnica, right, the guilds, right? So
Yeah, it has a very
Signet,
similar feel.
Simic,
Yep.
rather, and so on and so forth, right? Demir, Rakdos, blah, right?
Sure.
And they'll each have their own particular mechanic, and or synergies and things like that you're supposed to build around, if you want to have a more powerful deck in limited. That said, there are certain sets for which those color pairings and their archetypes and synergies are more or less flexible. So if you think of something like Dominaria United, the Boros deck was a go wide smash deck, just as to some degree, right, the bunnies are in this, the Selesnya bunnies are in this. But Dominaria is way more flexible.
Sure.
In terms of what you could do within those parameters, using cards that were white or red. So this, however, has the bunnies archetype for Selesnya, right?
Right.
And it has the mouse archetype for Boros. So cards within those, if you have a mouse sub-theme in your rabbits deck, they're not going to work as well for you.
Sure.
So there are mice that pump other mice, but don't pump all your creatures.
Right.
And those, while they provide 2 extra bodies for the bunny deck, and that's nice because the bunny deck pumps, the bunny deck goes wide, and and goes, um, for lack of a better word, ham.
Hey. Yeah.
uh, However, if you put the mice in there, it's not going to be as strong as it would be in the mouse deck,
Mm-hmm.
in the Boros deck. So there's some inflexibility within these archetypes that lends itself to particular drafting experiences that I will talk about. Um, uh, it The inflexibility of these archetypes means that there's not a lot of room to get really creative with the limited format.
Yep.
Um, the and that means that so the implications of that on the actual drafting process are as follows. There's not as much ability to stay open
Mm-hmm.
and still get the cards that you need for your archetype because you won't be cutting them.
Right.
Um, you may get rewarded eventually for trying to find the open lane, but you can't guarantee it. Because some of the cards that enable the synergies best are monocolored.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get them for your particular deck, someone else is getting them and using them at slightly less value, but still getting a little bit of value out of them, but not as
Right.
much as you would have in your deck.
Right.
Yeah.
So the draft, to some degree, rewards you for just staying in your lane, even if you have to take a less powerful card in those colors to try to cut it from the drafters to your left so that you're sending better signals.
Mm-hmm.
So you can choose to stay open and try for that, and it's still fine to do that. But again, the best decks are going to be the one where nobody is competing with you for that archetype.
Right.
And that happens a lot, and League then it exacerbates that, how much you'll be facing that toward the end of the league.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because and that leads to my answer to, is there a strongest color? And yes, to some degree we've seen a lot of different colors present as somewhat strongest. I'll give you breakdowns in a second. But my main answer is, if you can find the archetype that no one's taking, you are going, and you get lucky, you are going to be crushing people. Because
Yeah.
I would have told you that the blue-red archetype is one of the weaker ones.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I've been crushed by blue-red that got all of the mythics and rares and uncommons that
Yep.
are required to just wreck face.
Yep.
That
So
makes sense.
it is about getting those. With this, it has there are some commons that enable some good things. But if you get the uncommons that just
Mm-hmm.
make they are the things that make the deck work. If you don't get those uncommons and you're in that archetype, your deck is going to be actually really significantly weaker. Extremely weaker. like the uncommons are the things that they made that really just make the archetype go, like, just start spiraling
Mhm.
out of control. So for example, if you're in the frogs deck and you don't get the little frog that either of the little frogs that so there's three. There's the double colored one that allows you to flicker a creature, which is just stupid. That thing is just dumb. And then it's a 4/4 that allows you to pay one, a blue and a green. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. The Lily
That
Splash
allows
Mentor.
you
Yep.
to flicker a creature. And then there's the 2 mana 2/3 that allows when a creature leaves your board without dying, right? So bouncing it, for example, or flickering it. They gets something gets a +1/+1 counter. When then there's the 3 mana 2/3 that that hello cat. That allows you to make one thing unblockable and then return it to your hand.
Mhm.
If you don't get those cards, the deck is going to be significantly weaker. There's another one that taps down something and keeps it tapped down, taps down. That's less important for the mechanics of the deck. If you
Right.
get these, they just make it work. And with the lizard deck, if you get the one that keeps drawing you into new lizards or
Oh
new
my goodness, that
cards
guy.
on
Yep.
uncommon, when you hit opponent for any damage,
Yeah.
it's nuts. I and squirrels. Like if you get the rare is the main one. The rare is the one that makes everything happen. So the lizard rare and the squirrel rare are just so stupid in their particular archetypes.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, that's the one. And then the lizard rare is the 3/2 for 2 mana that has ward that also whenever you play a lizard spell, it pings.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
the
that's
and I
that's been
faced
my
that on turn 2. I've now faced that on turn 2 4 times into the uncommon, and there's no winning. Like
gross. Yeah, what can you do?
yeah,
Oh,
it's
but
To
it's
that's
be
so dumb
been
to
my
be
experience
and
too,
fair
though.
limited.
though,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Ham.
Oh, I just these every one of these archetypes is so synergistic and wants to just do one thing. And like the frogs deck, I mean the lizard deck, it's Rakdos, it wants to hit your opponent in the face. Like there are a lot of ways to enable that. So that's
Yeah.
simple enough. But like I think the frogs deck and the squirrel deck are like great examples. If they don't get to do the thing, and I think you're exactly right, if you don't have the key payoffs, you're really completely out of luck. Like the frogs deck, it wants to be removing its own creatures from the board for value. Like that's a weird mechanic. And
Yes.
when it does work, some of the payoffs are fantastic. You know, I'm
Yeah.
thinking there are a couple of the rares and the uncommons that are just absolutely bug nuts if you can actually get them going. But if you know, to the point where like I really like frogs in constructed even because of just how strong they are when they do the thing. It's like,
Yes.
well, I want 4 of this rare so that I can make sure I'm doing the thing because
Yes.
yeah, make just
No.
not even if you're in the right lane, the right cards just not showing up is way too likely in some of those kind of high risk, high reward or you know areas. Because yeah, if you're trying to use a bunch of common, you know, a couple of common squirrels in a deck that you really thought was frogs in pack one, oof, you're gonna
Yeah.
have a rough day.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway,
Well, just mentioning like how high the synergy just has to be with particular archetypes or creature types or whatever. I have to say it is sort of a relief, and I'm sure that Headology you have a much different opinion, or who knows, maybe similar opinion. To the fact that I'm so glad that we don't have infinite bonus sheets in this set, that I can actually care about drafting my uncommons. Because we haven't had that luxury in the last couple sets.
oh my goodness, yes.
And I mean, we have to deal with the special guest, right? But you're talking about like special guest rat colony or marrow gnar or something like this,
Or
which are
Soul
incredibly
of
strong.
Fire and Ice.
Right.
I mean that's pretty great. The
Well,
only
yeah,
special guest I've
that
actually
is powerful. Yeah.
yeah, that was the only special
Husky?
guest I've seen so far is Sylvan Tutor, which that one
Yeah.
is yeah.
I have not had the luxury of like coming across or against Sword of Fire and Ice yet.
I have.
Yeah.
Um not
But
fun.
aside from the special guest though, like being able to actually draft not a bunch of rares and have an okay deck has been sort of a relief for me.
Absolutely.
Opening up a pre-release kit and not having 12 rares and mythics has been a relief for me. Because that, I can tell you for that set in paper, it just didn't happen. And I think it has to do with either them reducing the amount of times that those types of cards show up, plus not 3-4 bonus sheets in a set.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean the bonus sheets from OTJ were out of control and it wasn't fun. But this one still has play boosters, so it's still, I mean, it's funny because we're like, oh, this is a relief, but if you realize that what a regular draft booster should be, like this is not a relief.
Yeah,
They, like,
it's crazy that this is the
it's like
scale down.
MKM,
Yeah.
and they're like, okay, how do you like this? And we're like, this is shit. And then they're like, okay, let's make it more shit with OTJ so that it'll feel like a relief when we tone it back down to what
Yeah.
MKM was.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I do think there are fewer just I win the game bombs, which I do appreciate. Just overall, there's just fewer cards that like Ezreal or Izoni or Bonnie Paul or
Right.
so many. There's so many in those two sets. There are some in this, but like it's less painful to some degree there.
Right.
That said,
Yeah.
you can feel like you're done if somebody goes the rare lizard into the actually I think it was what they played was like a turn 3. Yeah, the uncommon and then like into a 5/5 menace and like it was just it was not it was sorry. Yeah, it was a no, it was a turn 3 5/5 menace off the like 3 drop. Was a 3/2 that becomes a 4/3 if opponent was dealt damage this turn, but it
Oh,
enters
yeah.
with another +1/+1 counter
Mhm.
on it from the rare. So yeah, it was a turn
Ooh.
2 3/2 into a 5/5 menace.
Yes.
Thing that could gain menace into another 5/5 menace and then into the uncommons. They had 2 of the uncommons. I killed the rare, but they brought it back. It was just there was
Wow.
no way I was winning that game under any circumstances.
But that was because they had the right synergistic pieces and it happened to curve out. You know, like it's one of those
They
things
had the
where
right synergistic pieces.
Yeah.
It happened to curve out, but they had to have been placed in a particular, cat's stepping on things. Sorry.
that's okay.
It
We're
had to
all
have
cat
been
owners.
We all have
in
that
a
problem.
certain in a draft, they had to have been in a certain position where no one else was taking those things.
Mhm.
And that's just a luck position. That's not a like necessarily a skill position. There is some skill
Sure.
in figuring out what's open, but you can have just taken the rare and been like, oh, everybody's not in lizards, right?
Right.
No one had
and-
to have taken the uncommons.
Yep.
And so it was just oof.
Yeah,
it was
I've definitely
less than really.
Yeah, that's the key here. It seems like at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about identifying what's the strongest color or what's the strongest archetype, because it really just seems to matter. Figure out what seat you're in. And honestly,
Yeah.
I've made a couple of picks in a couple of the drafts that I've done where I made a very very intentional choice. Like there's this one this generically good monocolor card, which is probably the correct pick here. But there's also this gold card, and I really want to just
Right.
make sure that everybody here knows rats are not open. So I'm going to take
But
this.
that's the problem. They don't. You can have
Right.
2 of a particular uncommon. You can have 2 of particular commons that you think, oh, these are signals, because there's like 6 uncommons in a pack sometime.
Right.
So, like I just had one today. It was 5 or 6, I forget. So and there were 2 of the raccoons, the 1 and 2 green 3/4
Oh,
that
yeah.
gives all your raccoons
Oh, yeah.
+1/+1 and vigilance.
Yeah, one of the better
so
raccoon payoffs. Yeah.
when you spend 4, so it's just it's really hard to play. Boosters make it very difficult to navigate these, because what you think is a signal might not be, because there were 2 or more rares or mythics in the pack, and then there can be 6 uncommons. You're like, oh, this is open, and it's not.
Mhm. Right.
So reading signals, and there's no common signals, because you can have
Oh, yeah.
the play boosters can have not a single card of a particular color at common.
Yes.
The pack distribution is effed compared to old draft boosters.
Mhm.
Because you have fewer commons. Number one, you can have duplicate commons, and you can miss a color entirely. So what you think is a signal, what you think is gone, right, is not. And so it isn't necessarily about skill in reading the packs as much as it used to be. It's much harder to do so, and it's really kind of an art rather than a science at that point. So it's just it's
I will
it's
say-
frustrating for me right now, just because I've started off in colors that appeared to be completely open, and they're not, many times. And then I've had to play against these decks where they literally clearly were the only drafter in that at the table.
Right.
And literally got not only the best enabling stuff, but also the best removal in single color. And I'm like, how did that happen? Because they're playing something like 12 uncommons in the first cards. They don't play a single common. And I'm like, what? Like just earlier, right before this, I played against a person who played 2 fells and the
Oof.
as well as the uncommon that makes you sacrifice the biggest creature you own
Oh
on
yeah.
board rather. And
Yep.
then the squirrels, the uncommon squirrels, and like it was just like I was like, what? Two Wolverines,
Oh wow.
and which is a 5/4 that puts +1 counter or fights a token or kills an artifact or enchantment.
Mm.
And they were just like it was just mono uncommons, and I was like, this is not not okay. And here I am like
Oh.
playing my commons and like not necessarily the synergies that I would have liked, but it can just feel like okay, I had what feels more like a sealed experience where somebody just got a great pool and I'm just like
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
my deck building doesn't matter as much because they happen to get the cards that make their deck work better, more efficiently than mine. Though mine is constructed all right, it's still pieced together from a few different synergies from different color pairings, as opposed to maximizing by going one particular archetype and streamlining that. Just because I wasn't able to, because that's not how draft works if two people are in the same pair of colors.
Right.
Mhm.
And normally two people are going to be in the same pair of colors.
Right.
Um, that's going to happen often because you have 8 people.
Right.
And so if you just happen to be the one person who is just getting all the things, good on you. You got it. And so it reminds me a little bit of the allies in Battle for Zendikar.
Yeah.
There were a few colors that were conducive to being in allies that were best. The allies were all across all colors,
Hmm.
but they were better in certain colors. They were best in the Naya colors, I think,
Yep.
or Bant, I forget. Um, and uh, and if someone else was in allies, you were done. There was just no way you were going to actually get that deck to work well. If anyone else was in that allies deck.
Yeah.
So it was brutal because you had one thing that you needed to do and you needed to do it well if you chose to do it.
Mm.
Um, just like this. So it's less flexible. That also means that there's fewer iterations on the draft. You get the
Mm.
nuts version of whatever it is, the squirrel deck, let's go with for nuts.
Yep.
Um,
Sure.
and you get the nuts of version of whatever in that, and you're kind of depressed after that for every, other draft where you have a lesser version of that deck, but you're
Mhm.
gonna
Hmm.
see the same things over and over and over and over and over again. There's gonna be no real difference in the gameplay in that sense.
Right.
Whereas, different combinations with Dominator United or for other things where you could just combine different colors and make them all do different things, and then pull some stuff from other things without weakening your deck. Um, in fact, adding to it for its diversity and ability to handle different types of threats, etc. So it's my I do appreciate these archetypes. I think they're all really interesting. Um, I think that certain of them ask more of you than others, like the prowess deck. Prowess deck
Yep.
requires you to have a certain proportion of spells to a certain proportion of creatures,
Mhm.
which means that your threats, uh, if you just happen to get all spells and none of those creatures to put threats, answering one for one in a format is very difficult these days with power
Yep.
creep because everything's like a 2 for 1.
Right.
Um, so that one asks more of you sometimes in terms of the sequencing of your deck. You need to draw the threats that you need that get bigger with the prowess spells. Then you need to draw the spells to enable
Yeah.
them. They need to stay on the board so you can do this more. So you just need to have a lot more go right sometimes with some of these mechanics than others. The bunnies, they just ask you to play the cards that make the tokens, make sure you get a couple mass pump and you're good. Um,
Mhm.
the raccoons ask you to spend 4 mana per turn as long as you keep drawing, some spells.
Yeah.
That works. So you need to have some draw effects in your deck and so on and so forth. But that one's a little harder than the bunnies to achieve.
Yeah.
Um,
But if you're
the
doing the stompy thing, as long as you're
but if
playing
you're
the
doing
deck out,
something,
you'll
yeah. I mean, if
trigger
you're
it.
if you're
It'll be
drawing into
okay.
more cards, if you're not getting
Mhm.
flooded with 10 mana every time, like I am so far, again, that's part of my bitterness.
I've,
There's some salt
I,
here.
I,
Um,
I- I'm
you're
I'm
not
with
getting
you on
10
that. I've,
mana
I've
in
flooded out pretty badly in a
for
few games.
three
Yep.
games in a row in your 16 land deck. Cool. Then you're probably doing something every turn. Um, the Demir deck requires a little bit more finesse in terms of usually it's going to be about the unblockable that fixes up your hand early. That thing's
Oh
really
yeah.
important to get for that
Mm.
deck.
Yep.
It's a lot smaller creatures, so you need to really make sure that you can handle bigger threats, and so on and so forth. So the key parts are going to be that unblockable thing to fix up your hand and a lot of removal, to get to your cards that care about threshold and so on and so forth. And then so that one's going to take a little bit more finesse. And then Simic is just, again, you have to get the sequence, you have to get those cards, but it's really powerful when it does. And it can get there, it can make the things big, it can keep drawing you into new stuff. It's got most of the mechanics. You just need to have those cards that allow you to bounce and keep them alive with counter magic or whatever, so on and so forth. You do need removal with that deck as well. Polywog is really or polywog something is really good as
Polywop, the fight
a
spell.
nice kill spell. It
Go
is
Polywog.
situational
Yep.
because, again, if the creature dies, you're not fighting anything, so
Right.
you're not punching anything rather. But a 1 mana like effect of that at instant is crazy.
Well,
So
and this
again,
is a great
they have
example of what
tools.
this is a great example of what we're talking about. Because for
Yes.
4 mana, this is okay if you have to, but you really want that cost reduction by having
Yeah.
frogs. Like if the squirrel deck or the
Yeah.
raccoon
You
deck
put
is
it in the
nowhere
other decks, but it's
it,
much weaker.
much.
It is
Yeah,
so
yeah.
powerful in the deck it's meant for, and that's a good illustration exactly
Yeah.
of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So let's go into some of the data. Obviously, so what I'm going to be looking at here is 17 lands and untap.gg. And one thing to keep in mind is that this is still really early in the format. And the data on 17 lands is skewed because it is people who report to 17 lands, and that can be particular drafters with particular styles, etc.
Right.
And then the untap.gg is looking at a larger pool of data over just all arena in theory, with anybody who has untap.gg, which is a lot of people, perhaps more than because people like looking at it's a really useful thing that allows people to look at their deck during the game.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
If you're on
really
arena, I highly,
just cheating
they
is
don't, they
what
don't,
it is. Like,
they
I
don't sponsor
miss
this
it
show,
when
but
I
I would
play
highly
in
recommend them.
paper.
They're great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I miss
Yeah.
it when I play in paper. It's so nice.
Oh my god. Yeah. What was my win rate with that? Oh, dang it. Yeah.
Yes, what was my win rate with
Oh,
that
yeah.
exactly? But like mainly, I just like to be able to look and see what's left in my deck. Do I have an out
Oh
here?
my goodness.
What am I
Yes.
looking and hoping to draw? What sequence will be best for me, etc. And so for let's look at let's look at first. We're going to look at 17 lands first. I'm just going to tell you what I see, and just talk you through it a little bit. In 17 lands, if you're looking at a monocolor deck, meaning a deck that is only one color, and you'll note that this is very infrequent. The number of games is going to be quite small. Mono white is not the top.
Interesting.
You'd think it would be, right? Because Carlo was saying it felt like the strongest color. But maybe that's because it was in other with other colors. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Right.
So mono black actually has a 63.9% win rate.
Wow.
Now remember, okay, now so here's the trick. Mono white only has a 59.7. Mono green has a 61.5. We'll deal with the other ones later. So what you need to understand here, though, is actually that the mono black only has 46 wins out of 72 games. Mono white has 92 wins out of 154 games. So it's been played twice as much. So we're getting a little bit of a better sense of where the white win rate is, the mono white, but we don't really have enough data for that black. This is still super early in the format. So don't take these numbers that you're seeing on 17 lands as indicative of like indicators of what you're supposed to be doing yet.
Absolutely.
It's not that that's actually telling you do this. So from there, let's look at the monocolor plus a splash. I don't know how they define splash. I haven't looked it up yet. I don't know if it's like 2-3 cards or what. I don't know.
Okay. Sure.
How they determine that. But let's look at monocolor plus a splash. Here, what you're finding is out of 564 games, mono white plus a splash has 365 wins, which gives it a 64.7% win rate. The next highest win rate at that point is 59.2%, so almost 60 with mono black plus a splash. So I'm assuming that plus a splash means maybe like 2 or 3 cards maximum. Maybe 4 if you're pushing it. I don't know. But let's call it around 4 cards maximum. But that's a huge gap.
Yeah.
That's a large gap. Again, the games are only 564, so this is a very small sample size. We can't really judge off of this, but that's a very large gap.
Yeah.
What that also
Yeah.
means, though, is that it seems to be easier to create a monocolored white deck, which means that the white commons and uncommons are probably strong.
Yeah.
Because
that
you're
makes
not
sense.
building a monocolored deck out of rares, because that's really hard.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So it's important to look at that. Now let's look at 2-color. They actually label it 2-color. The one with the best win percentage in 2-color is Selesnya, green-white, with 59.2%. But right after that is 58% with Rakdos.
Interesting.
58.4% with Golgari, and then 58% with Rakdos. Neither of which include white.
Right. Interesting.
Okay. So this is untapped. No, that's right. This is 17 lands. We'll go to untapped in a second. We'll talk about that for a second. But those are right after that, right? 59.2% versus 58.4 and 58%. And the games with Rakdos are 10,000, Selesnya 11,000, Golgari 11,000. So we're all around approximately the same number of games played. So if you look at that, white isn't necessarily getting you strongest color vibes. It's the combination of colors that are sort of making that work. And it can also be that it's just super popular and people are playing it a lot and it's winning more, which is good. But like, I don't think that amongst those 3, we can necessarily say, okay, white's the strongest color or Selesnya is the strongest guild.
Right.
We kind of just have to like take it with a grain of salt at this point. Still early in the format. Even when there's a huge outdistancing of the field by any particular pair of colors, like there would have been an AFR for red-black Rakdos, where the sets are really imbalanced, like Streets of New Capenna with any of the Bant color pairings, or all 3. You then have to take it a little bit, even if it comes out that there's a stronger color, people will then somewhat self-correct that by picking those colors, and you still have to go with what's open. Looking at 2-color plus a splash, we get 55.8% Golgari plus splash. That's the max. And everything else is there's like 4 others that are fairly close. Selesnya plus a splash, 54.9. Orzhov plus a splash, 54.8. And Simic, 54.3. Boros plus splash, again, 54%. So like, it's all pretty well balanced that we're seeing with 2-color plus a splash. I'm not going to go into 3-color and 3-color plus splash because those are going to be very rare decks that you encounter. None of them goes above 52% in 3-color plus splash. None of them goes above 53.8% in 3-color, which is Abzan. Which is expected to some degree because we've seen that black, green, and white seem to have pretty good stuff. But that's 17 lands, and just looking at that, you see that it's early in the format. You see that it does depend on the color pairing that you're in and whether something's open and so on and so forth. If we go to Untapped, they have Selesnya as the top with 18.3% of decks getting 6+ wins. The popularity is 12.1%. The matches are 40,000. It has 3,000 more than any other pairing, basically.
Wow.
So people just like drafting it, and it seems to be available. Probably the commons are what make it the more available deck, just because you can play with those commons a lot, and the commons tend to be passed around. Golgari is next, with a 17% conversion, 6+ wins, and Orzhov is the final of those A tier decks at 17.6%. So we have a full 0.5% difference between Selesnya and the next thing. But we have 4,000 more games for those. So it's still early. We still don't quite know. Selesnya seems pretty powerful. Golgari doesn't include white, which is the second thing. The third thing does include white, which is Orzhov. And then in the B tier, they're listing Rakdos first, Simic second, Boros third, and Gruul fourth. Poor Dimir and Azorius and Sultai and Abzan and Izzet and Naya are all... but they're not popular.
Right.
Interesting.
So...
I mean,
yeah, those decks apparently aren't
yeah.
they just aren't coming together. They aren't looking good on paper, so people aren't going for it. Yeah.
To some degree, but many of them, you just need the uncommons, and if you don't start seeing the uncommons early, you don't go into them early. You try to go into something else, and even if if it's looking pretty weak, you stick with it because of the aforementioned reasons.
Right.
You don't then like go, oh, that card is so strong in Dimir that I want to go into that.
Right.
The cards require other cards to be good often. So it's just, there's a lot going on with this set. Drafting it is very challenging for that reason, but you can just have times where it just flows right to you.
Yep.
You happen to pick the right one to start with. You didn't change up because you didn't need to, because you were just past the stuff. So there is skill. Every ounce of my skill is trying to work this out. And unfortunately, I mean, whatever decisions that I'm making, even if I try and stay open, I don't seem to be getting a sense of what actually is open. And we'll see if anybody drafts my seats differently. Obviously, you can see the VODs on YouTube, and you can see the you can come join me live on Twitch and see what you would have done. But
all those links
it can be very disheartening once you it can be very disheartening to start a draft off and feel like you've got a handle on where it's going, and then and then have somebody pivot right in pack 2, and it's just gone in pack 3.
But at the same time, if you stay the course, if you stay the course and things go your way, it can be absolutely fantastic. You know, I think it'd be fun if you got any specific, thoughts or about this, but I don't know, there was one time when I decided I was going to do the mice deck, right? And I was going to make it happen. And I picked up a short bow, I think in pack 2, which there's a rabbit on the art. Don't be fooled. This is a mouse card.
It's a mouse card. Yeah. It's a Valiant card. It's a Valiant card. Yeah.
Yes, if you have Valiant triggers, this is the best way to make it happen. And I was just, like I had it, and I had like 2 or 3 of the good red mice. I was like, okay, I think this will be okay. Hopefully some more will come my way and we'll make it work. And then sure enough, pack 3, I got past like 3 separate Flowerfoot Swordmasters, and they ended up being the core of the deck. Why in the world anyone was passing this, I don't know. I'm assuming it was, I think it goes to show kind of how like
the rabbit
tunnel vision
actually want it
in their lane. Nobody else was looking for a cheap mouse, and so I was just like, all right, sweet. And that deck ended up being pretty darn good.
It's a stupid card in the mouse deck, especially if you can trigger that Valiant. Yeah,
and Flowerfoot Swordmaster go together. There are a number of times there was one game I got all 3 of them out offspringed, and then I was just on my turn as a short bow, just bounce it over. I felt like I was playing Nadu in limited. It was wild. It was absolutely ridiculous.
I got the Boros mouse, the 3/2 that also has Valiant, gets +1 counter whenever the short bow is really nice to equip to that. It's also nice to equip to the little red mouse 2/2 that allows you to rummage.
Ooh, yes.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to rummage past the 10 lands.
Oh no!
So I didn't get there. But it did help. We tried. We tried hard. I've had some bad land luck in 2-color decks, unfortunately, in this. But that little
Yeah.
scribe is pretty sweet. If you need to empty out your hand of some lands, and try to scry through some more.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, I believe
or
it.
just draw into some action.
Well, yeah, and Whisker Skill Scribe, perfectly good, common for what you're doing, but it's really not going to be a big, it's not a reason to be in the mouse deck,
Yeah,
but if
if
you
you
happen to
don't
be in the mouse deck, great.
exactly,
Yeah.
if you don't have, right, anything to trigger Valiant, or you can trigger Valiant once, sure, and get value off of it,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. But if you really want to maximize it, you want to be able to trigger Valiant more than once, including the equip cost of the um artifact there, which is super
Yeah.
sweet. But yeah, so it's about getting things that work, and obviously the Valiant deck also requires you to get things that target. And I had 3 of those artifacts in the deck, by the way.
Wait, the short post?
I had
Really?
3 short bows, 2 of the Boros mouse,
Wow.
uncommon
Ooh,
signpost, and
dang.
I didn't draw the short bows,
Oh, that
or I didn't
hurts.
draw the mouse. It was
Oh,
it was it
no.
was an impressive set of games in terms of how bad the luck was, but it
Oh,
was a beautiful deck. I've had some crazy beautiful decks that just didn't perform, um, sadly. And that happens. That's magic. It's all right. It's just it feels really bad when you suddenly actually get,
Yeah.
a really good deck in your colors, and
mm-hmm.
then you get the bad luck on the actual games. So
Yes.
you're like, cool.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter how many great bombs you have if you never draw them. Yeah,
Right.
it's just,
Exactly. Or how
it
many
is what
just
it is.
how much your deck synergizes if you don't draw the synergistic pieces, the things that make them
Right.
work. Um, and so like you can have a bunch of the little like frogs, but they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
get outclassed so fast if you don't start using the mechanic that will work. If you don't draw those cards, or if they get killed, if the one you draw early gets killed,
Yeah.
you're in a bit of dire
Oh,
straits.
yeah.
Removal is very key as always, but the the early removal is difficult to find against a lot of the things where it most matters, because like it Polywog, if they've been killing off all your things, right, you're not going to be able to kill their stuff.
Right.
Which
Right.
is what was happening with the lizard deck, right? I was like, I just need a creature on the board so I can fight that thing. Like, I just need
Right.
it. But
Oh my goodness, yeah.
but and it's 4 mana otherwise. And that thing also has ward. So there's there's
Everything has
stuff
ward
that goes
now.
on that
It's
you're lost
Every
the game
single
from
thing
turn
has
2, and it feels
ward.
bad.
Yeah, everything has word. It is what it is. Yeah.
So
Well, you mentioned removal, and I think I think it would make sense to talk about that, because I think in recent sets, um, kind of the traditional wisdom is that removal is very important, and you should always draft removal, even if it has to be expensive. That's okay. Like we've seen cards even like Rise of Exodus, which is a 6-drop, be like a very good pick in its environment. Nowadays, I don't think that would hang, but like there was a time and a place for it, and you have to do it. I think in recent sets, though, with cards doing 2 or 3 things, removal has become less valuable,
yeah, it
and
can feel, I mean, it's still valuable.
but
You absolutely must also have pressure.
yes, that's the
You
biggest thing.
can't 1 for 1 without the pressure.
Oh, and
If you don't have the
that's true of
pressure
all
and you're
Magic.
just 1 for 1ing, they will win.
Yep,
It's like
yes, that is always, and that's true in limited. It's also true in constructed. It's also true
yeah.
in commander. If you answer threats,
It's
it's
never
fine. If you
been
don't
more
then
true.
win the game, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's never been more true. Like I actually had a hand
Mm-hmm.
in the last set, in Modern Horizons, actually, I think it was Modern Horizons 3,
Mm-hmm.
in which I spent the first 4 turns removing everything that they did, and it did not matter.
I believe you.
Because I did not have anything on the board to start, even
Mm-hmm.
like something small to start pinging in for damage,
Right.
Right.
right? So, and everything that they did was leaving behind something of value or gaining them some sort of card advantage, or you get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh
even
yeah.
just filling up their graveyard for some things to get back, etc. So, so these days, like, the premium creatures obviously are going to be, especially the ones, I mean, the premium creatures are what enables everything in these. So
Mm-hmm.
you do pick those often over removal. But the unconditional removal is absolutely key.
So
Um,
important.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely key. So things like Fel, even though they're sorcery speed, you're taking them, etc. So
100%.
um,
Well, and
yeah.
the thing is, this set is very aggressive. Like it feels like every single deck is an aggro deck. Like I don't feel like there's any control decks here, right? It's all creatures. And so when you're lining up your creatures against your opponent's creatures, being able to pick off the pieces of their board that don't line up well against yours, because it like I can't express how important that is. So I know for me, I've had a couple of drafts where I just prioritize removal over everything else. And it works is the crazy thing. You do, again, you're right. You do
It
need suppression. You
depends.
do
You
need
need
some
to draw
creatures.
more than just the removal, obviously.
Yeah.
And
But I got,
and
yeah.
single pieces of removal will not work against the bunnies deck.
Oh, true.
If you
That's
come up
very
against
true.
the bunnies deck, you're wrecked. If that's your
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to have just a board presence and then remove the key pieces, like the mass pump, that you can remove, like the 2/2 that pumps everything, because they didn't realize that reprinting the unicorn from Battle Baldur's Gate was
Are you
a
talking,
bad
about the
idea.
rabbit warrior that pumps the 4 different creature types?
Oh, yeah.
What?
The caller, the Valley
Valley
Quest Caller.
Quest Caller.
Yeah, this little guy.
That
I love
card
all the
is
callers are great, by the
insane.
way.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a lord. No, I'm just talking about the common 2/2. That
Common
you pay
2/2.
4 and you pump all your creatures +1/+1.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Veteran or something like
The Warren Elder. Yes.
Warren Elder. Yeah. That's the one.
Yep.
Warren
Cleric.
Elder. That's the one. Yes. And like Carrot Cake and just like producing tokens and gaining life and yeah.
Sure, why not?
So
yeah.
And the rabbit, Intrepid Rabbit that pumps +1 2 times if you offspringed.
Oh, yeah.
But the main
great.
card there is going to be like the 3/3 that draws you cards whenever 2 bunnies. Well, I mean, whenever 2 bunnies or more enter the battlefield. So that one's just really, really good. Because it draws you further into a deck, and white-green has very little to no card draw. But you don't even need that if you just curve out sometimes. So
right.
It's still just a great card for that deck because you are often putting 2 bunnies into play a turn. So yeah, it's just ugh. Like I'm not even getting greedy and asking for rares, I promise. Like I'm saying this, like the commons and uncommons, they're the ones that are that if you get the combinations of them correctly, they will crush. But the rares hurt too. The rares, like I said, really hurt. Especially if you see them early on the board. They're the lizard rare is the one I hate to see most early on the board. The other one I hate to see most is the bunny rare that pumps all your bunnies when it attacks. Gives them all +1/+1 counters, I think, or something like that.
Phineas? Is that the this guy?
That one, yeah.
The Ace Archer? Yeah.
I don't like seeing that early on the board either. Those are 2 where you're just like, I have to kill those, and I have to kill those soon.
Whatever it takes. Yep.
And I don't have a piece of removal. I don't happen to have drawn a piece of removal in my first 7 cards. So
yeah,
and
for me,
like
playing that card, like playing Phineas into hop to it, the game is just over.
Exactly.
That's bonkers.
It's over. It doesn't matter what you play after
There's
the fact.
nothing that gets you out of that because you won't even make it to 5 mana to play a Wrath. Like there's if you even happen to have
if you're lucky enough
in your deck the Wrath and drawn it, you won't make it to 5 mana. So it's so brutal. So like there are games that feel over before they've really begun, and and feel like decisions at that point don't matter much. But you know, we try. We try. In this streamer early access event, I had nutty raccoon deck with several of the Wandertail Mentor early into like just, you know, other craziness. And I did trophy back to back with 2 different raccoon decks. One which was the nutty one, and then the next one not as nutty at all. And then did trophy.
Nice.
But it was a good one. I do like that deck. I do think it's fun to play. But again, there are some draws from other decks that are just like, that's the thing. If a certain mechanic gets going, you are just going to lose to it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are certain
Well,
decks that have serious weaknesses to other certain decks.
hmm
So I I think that unless the Boros deck uh gets one of its nuttier draws or any way to give trample, it's going to lose to Selesnya every time.
Sure. Just
I
jump
don't
blocks
think
for
it has a
days.
good
Yeah.
matchup against Selesnya at all.
hmm
Um, so that hurts when you feel like you're starting off at a huge disadvantage in limited, just playing your cards. That's
Yeah.
something that I only expect to really see in constructed, where you built a deck that has a plan, right? It's
hmm
gonna have certain weaknesses, right?
Right.
Um, usually in limited, that's not the case. Anything can beat anything else, usually, and that's still the case. You can still beat anything else. But here it feels like you're starting off at such a disadvantage that like you're at like, oh, great.
It's
Um,
it, it's interesting you bring up constructed because all of these different archetypes are kind of making their way into standard
Yep.
and challenging like the old standard norm. And it's it's hilarious to me that like the lizards deck that we explained is a standard deck. You can
Mhm.
literally just cap out at 3 mana cost, add Jasper Flint from OTJ, and you're good
Yep.
oh,
to go.
naturally, yeah.
Done. Boom.
And the game's over. Your opponent doesn't want to ever have to pay 2 life to pay the ward on Gev. And then
Nope.
when you land like the 3-drop lizard that then says, well, all your sources from lizard ability do +1.
+1,
Yes.
which
Yeah,
it's
the
effectively
rare.
double.
It's a
Like
3/3
yeah,
rare red. Yeah, I
yep,
know that one.
yeah, little
Yeah,
tiny
so
Torbrand over
so
there.
you know, Gev
Yeah.
is doing 2 damage. Your Vine Lasher, when your lands enter, are doing 2 damage each time. Your Hired Claws dealing 2 damage. Like it just the draft archetype, except take all of my rares and add
Yes.
Jasper Flint
Yep.
is a legit standard deck.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it feels rough to be.
Yeah.
I mean, because like I said, it feels like some people are playing constructed and you're playing limited.
Yep.
Because they can
Yeah.
just get those pools, and you're just like, I mean, get past that draft because nobody was taking it and nobody thought to,
Yeah.
do that, and it's just like, oh, and
Well,
those bad matchups where you're just like, I am starting off already at a disadvantage, and then beyond that, you're on the draw, or you're, you had to mulligan, or it's just
mhm.
it feels bad. I do still love the set and its mechanics. I think it's really fun.
Mhm.
I think it's a little. I'm gonna look at the stats for exactly how fast it is when it's been played a
Mm,
little bit more. When
that'd be interesting.
Sirkowitz gets
Yeah.
that going. Um, uh, hopefully we'll be able to see exactly how fast it is compared to other sets
Mhm.
in recent history. All will be one was very fast, so
Yeah.
that I don't know that it'll compete with that. We'll
Mhm.
see. But and I think that it's very telling that the two more controlling decks, the Azorius and Demir, are in C in this
Oh
rating.
yeah. No, you got to be swinging
So
fast. You got to be swinging hard.
they're
That's.
popular and they're
Mhm.
not getting that much. Now there can be a fast Demir deck in the Rats deck with the uncommon 3/1 that gets pumped for other rats you control. If you can keep
Oh, yeah.
making it unblockable, that's pretty sweet. Like
Mm.
one opponent did to me. I was just about to win. I was so happy, and then they found the frog. They put the frog in that makes it unblockable, and then did
Oh
that.
no.
So, and it was a
Mm.
5 power, and I was at um uh I think I was at 6 life, but they also had a flyer. So I was about to win, but there we go. And good on them, right?
Yeah.
If you can find the open lane, if you can make the cards work, you have to draw those in good sequence, but there we are.
Mhm.
But yeah, Demir and Azorius, bottom of the heap for the two colors. And
Mm.
that's because they're controlling. And
Yeah.
it's just a really aggressive format, it looks like, to Carlos' point. Um, but I don't know how aggressive yet. I don't know comparatively.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my long spiel. That's kind
Yeah.
of, what I've been wrestling with right now. I'm hoping to have better land luck so I can really sort of delve into the format a little bit
Yeah.
more. I had the craziest bunny deck ever. And let me see if I can find that for you, an image of it. It was beyond gross. Um, well,
Awesome.
it started off like this. Let me send it to the Discord.
Okay.
Hold on. It started off like this. So stupid. Um,
So the question though, so I know we were mentioning when you were talking about the data from Untapped, like some folks playing like 2 colors splash another color, and that's been difficult for me in terms of drafting to do because our mana fixing just isn't as good. I don't know if any of y'all have experienced that. I know there was one instance during the pre-release, and again, I'm talking about sealed versus draft, is that in the pre-releases, I found that I didn't open up like a whole lot of creatures to be able to even play 2 colors on some occasion. Like
yeah, you
I would
had to
have
play
like
3,
5
yes.
creatures in white, 5 creatures in green, and then I'd have to do something else with poop mana fixing.
Yes.
So I'm
There's a
curious how that
grotto
translates
and
to
there's
draft.
the Uncharted Paradise or something like that. Uncharted Territory Paradise, whatever
Yep.
it comes into play tapped, but you can choose a color for it to be, and then it'll untap as that color, of course.
Yep.
But there isn't a lot of mana fixing in this. They really are forcing the 2 color archetype to some degree. You can make more colors, but
Yeah.
it is it's difficult to do. So that was just the start of my bunny deck.
All
Look
right.
at that.
So on the video feed, I am pulling up the beginnings
Look
of
at
this bunny
that
deck.
beauteousness.
So you got the wow, you have
Well,
3 of the Head of the Homestead and the Warren War Leader, which is the mythic bunny that, like, if
so
that's
the Warren War Leader is based off of the artist's bunny Edward. It's
adorable.
so adorable. It's so cute. It's got a lovely little. The artwork is Edward, and it's so cute.
That's
His
amazing.
Edward has passed a long time ago, but I don't know about how long ago, but it's very sad. But Edward is now living on forever as the war leader.
Incredible.
But I got that first pack, and then I got past the nuts and bunnies,
Yeah.
and this deck ended. I still got past all the bunnies. It did not play.
Wow.
Mana. I never got a second planes most games,
Oh my
even though my
goodness.
mana ratio was basically, was mathematically correct. That can just happen. So it was just sad that I finally was in the right lane.
Yeah.
The one time I was in the right lane, and this was just like, all right, wait.
Oh,
I've been
bummer.
in the right lane twice with the raccoons too on the early access streamer event. That
Yeah.
deck was crazy. But like this one did not play, and I was devastated.
I'm so sorry
It
to hear that
lost
because yeah.
not drawing the second planes like almost every game we lost. And I was like, should I
Man.
be adding a planes here? But I need the green early. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Ouch.
but it was just unlucky. That happens. But like when you get a start like that, you're like, oh.
Yeah, you like I can't lose. This is gonna be the greatest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, I love
Yep.
this deck. Anytime I say I love this deck, anytime I love a deck, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
That's my and anytime one of my chat was like, here, do a draft, a stipulation draft where they determine
Yep.
what you're doing, so the rules to the drafting. So I did a stip draft, the cutest card, so the cutest effing deck ever. So I took the cutest card out of every pack.
Amazing.
That deck trophied. It was a mess.
Of course it did.
But that deck trophied.
In a set like this, to be sure though, you can make an argument for a lot of cards being super cute, but still, that's wild.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was a mix of like lizards and mice and bunnies. It had everything. And because I happened to find the little the 2/1 that allows you to rummage. It's in red, uncommon. It's technically for the lizard deck because it adds red black when you when it enters the battlefield and opponent was done damage. It's like the new Burning Tree Emissary.
Yep.
But I got that. I think that thing's adorable. So like that was one of my early picks.
That's
Look at
understandable.
its expression. It's so happy.
It's funny because I haven't really looked closely at it, but actually, here, you know what? I'm for the folks on the video feed. Enhance. Let's really dig in there.
Enhance, yes.
Enhance.
It's so cute.
That is super cute. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I
It's just
built
a little
the
guy.
cutest effing
Just a
deck
little
ever.
guy.
That thing trophy. The bunny deck went 1-3.
Oh my goodness.
It one loss. Sorry, 1-3. One of its losses was to DeFore, who was running
Okay.
the craziest bat deck and played 4 rares in the first 12 cards. 12 cards. It lost to that. And then DeFore
he's a great
also
player.
went
If he had a
1-3.
bomb pool, what could you do? Yeah.
No, but DeFore also went 1-3. The one win
Wait,
was
what?
like one of our the one win was to us.
Amazing.
Oh,
So brutal.
oh, that
It
hurts.
was so brutal.
Oh my
They
goodness.
beat us and nobody else. And we were like, what the hell?
What's
So,
happening?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's where you go into
It was-
force chat afterwards and you rage and you're
It's like, what was that? Come on, man.
What was that? How could you no. DeFore's awesome. We're all
Absolutely,
friends.
nothing
It's
but
great.
love. Yep.
But yeah, so it was a time. It was a time,
Incredible.
and that was a deck, and games of Magic were attempted to be played.
Yeah.
Like it was a thing.
I believe it.
But yes, so limited.
Yeah,
So overall,
interesting.
my current thoughts are: I want to keep playing. I am hoping that the format doesn't go stale. Although we are getting like Duskmorn like right away, so
Oh yeah.
I don't even know if it has time to go stale.
Might not,
Even
yeah.
with these really concrete and inflexible archetypes. So
Mhm.
we'll see. I'm still having fun playing cute things and trying out new strategies. There's still some decks that I haven't had a good version of that I really want to play. So
Mhm.
but those are just the thoughts so far.
I dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah,
enjoying
Carlos.
it. It's been a
Yeah.
good time. I find myself definitely wanting to draft the set more than I ever did OTJ for obvious reasons.
Mhm.
Probably I would say my most wins so far. Like I said, in my opinion, white was the best color or the strongest color, but I've had a couple 7 wins with just solid like red-green beater deck. I love the red removal spells a lot. There's the take out the trash or something. It's like 3 damage
Oh
for 2.
yeah, take out the
Yeah.
trash is great.
There's-
Yep.
And as long as you control a raccoon, you
uncommon
can. Yeah.
that you
Mhm.
gift a card and it deals 2 to a creature and then 3 to your opponent, or you gift a treasure or something. So I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
care
I
late
think
game.
they
I'm trying to
actually
find
put
that
that in
3
the
damage to
cutest
kill my
deck.
opponent.
It's got a
Nice.
little mouse
Well-
with a flower that's like spewing
Oh, that
bullets.
one also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I feel like take out the trash specifically is kind of the opposite of Polywallop, right? Because Polywallop, you definitely want to be in the frog deck. Take out the trash. I've noticed it coming around later than I would have expected it to. And I think because people see, it has a raccoon payoff, so I have to wait till raccoons. It's still instant 3
No,
damage.
it's just a
Like,
3
Yeah,
mana
yeah.
good. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's just a 3 damage good spell. Like you
Yeah.
just do
it's,
it.
even if you're not in raccoons, pick it up. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other 2 drop card I think we were just talking about was Blooming Blast.
Yes.
Something
Something
like
like
that.
this?
Yeah, it was so
That
cute.
one rules.
I
Yeah.
put it in the cute deck because again, that mouse. Look at the mouse and the little little flower that it's
Yes.
using to shoot things. Look at the mouse. Look at the mouse's the mouse is like
Adorable.
Yeah,
Look at
these
the little face
cards
on
are
the
great.
mouse.
Again, let's get in here. We need to really appreciate. Uh-oh. Or even
Maybe. There's a little flower gun.
It's like
It's just a little
Yeah.
gun.
Oh
Just
yeah,
a
going
little
for it.
eat flower death, punks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I love the smell of pollen in the morning. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
These cards are great. I know Ham, I put an image up in our chat in the Discord, was a little
Mhm.
draft I got to do on Magic Online, and it was a blast. I was, again, here's me telling you I'm drafting like white X decks.
Hey,
But getting a little
if it's working, it's working.
Mabel is a powerhouse.
Oh
Dude,
god,
of a
that card is
card.
yeah.
I
Mhm.
can't anticipate you like losing the game after you've played that. It's just very strong. Being able to keep the Crag Flame around for the rest of the game, if your opponent
Yeah.
does nothing, is kind of broken.
Well, Yeah, and we understand how important equipment is if you're trying to get those Valiant triggers. It's so good.
Yeah, just move it over.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
I've even had somebody, and we mentioned this earlier, right, where you have the 1 mana card, the white mouse that when it gets Valiant, you target, and you just move them
The
over.
flower petal sword
and you
master.
just like double pump them, and it's just
It's nuts.
cheap equipment. Cheap equipment.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely nuts. I'm a big fan. So, yeah, I gotta say, I think this draft is just I've been having a really good time with it. Like I've drafted a handful of times. I normally in a given set I'll draft between 5 and 10 times, get my all the rares and mythics that I need on Arena, and then move on to Constructed is usually what I do when a new set comes out. But I actually got a 7-0, which I don't always do, and I was really excited. Thank you.
That's
And I'm
awesome.
gonna brag about it in public because it's
You
a big
should.
deal. And
It's important.
Look, I did it. And it was pack one, pick one, Yigra, Eater of All, and there was no looking back. It was fantastic. Which
I have gotten that card up to a 36 and still lost the game.
Oh, brutal. Well, this happened to be in a draft where nobody was prioritizing removal. And so I picked up I picked up a ton of mono black removal.
I picked up stuff to give it trample, the overprotect spell, and never found it.
Wow.
Oh no. Well, in this exact same pool, I think it was pack 2, or I don't remember if it was pack 2 or pack 3, but I opened Vren, the Relentless as well. And so I was Sultai. It was Golgari Splash Blue for Vren. And it was it was basically just whatever you play, I'm going to kill it. Yeah. And then one of my 2 gigantic, either mythic or rare bombs will show up and just take over. And that's exactly how it played out. And it was untouchable. It was great. So I found a way to build a control deck. All you need to do is find all the mythic bombs.
Did I mention with the Edward deck, I only drew Edward once, and it was when I was already dead, going to die.
That's such a bummer. Because that card's
But
amazing.
at least I got to look at Edward's cute little face.
Edward got to pop up and say, hey, I'm here for you. It's going to be okay. But it's
hello.
not really.
I'm ready to rally the troops. Troops this way, please.
Oh my goodness. Awesome. Good stuff.
It's so good. Yeah. And my cat likes streaming with me with this.
Oh yeah? I'm glad. Yeah, actually my cat has been more active on my desk now that I think about it over the last week.
Maybe they sense kindred spirits amongst all the animals, or they're like, ooh, I can eat those mice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, so much prey on our screens. They're like, "Ooh, what's going on over here?" Yeah. That's actually another detail.
Good hunter. He just plays with everything. Fortunately, we've never had a mouse or a rat or anything like that. But the flies. At one point, he was chasing a fly. Let me know if your cat's ever done this. One point, he was chasing a fly, and he caught it up against the window, and he went home. And I was like, "Okay, that's the end of that." But then I noticed he was holding his mouth really strangely. I was like, what's going on here? So he travels to the edge of the desk, jumps off, gets onto the floor, coughs it up. I mean, that's not there. He just opens his mouth and it falls out. And I'm like, oh, that's gross. Okay. I was like, okay. But it turns out he'd been holding and I was like, okay, I'll go get a towel and clean that up, or paper towel and clean that up. Yeah. But it turns out he was holding his mouth that funny because the thing is still perfectly fine. It just starts wandering around, and he's like, "Yes, more fun." He was cradling
it. It's a playmate
in his mouth, so he could play more.
That's incredible.
And I was like, "You sadistic bastard!"
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Here he is. Here's the sadistic bastard.
There we are.
If you're listening on the audio, you get to meet Halder in the video feed. Check it out over on YouTube.
Yeah.
Adorable. Oh my goodness.
Luna's here.
He's my little panther.
Oh my goodness.
I have never seen a cat do that. Arwen was a good hunter. She would just any fly or insect, she's just like, this is mine. And I'm just like, okay, that at least it's not it's not suffering. But okay.
It's gone, sure.
But him.
That's wild.
But anyway, so kindred spirits with the animals. He's never going to want to eat one of those rats or mice, apparently. He's just going to want to be buddies.
Yeah.
And I also think one detail that I just absolutely love about Bloomburrow is that there are like 2 cats in the whole set,
Yes.
and they're these gigantic elemental terrors that, well, of course, our heroes are all mice and
Igra and
rabbits.
the
Of course,
lynx.
they're afraid of the cats. I kind of love that. Anyway,
That's great.
More
Good
cats.
stuff.
please. More
Exactly.
cats.
It's so
more
good.
cats, exactly. I'm just waiting for Peas Blossom, my cat, to come by, but she's
Oh,
too
yeah.
cool for school right now. She'll be by
Oh,
to
she's
bug me when it's
adorable.
not as
I love
convenient.
her.
I know, me too. I'm a fan.
Luna has her own little chair over here now, and so
Amazing.
she is it's her throne in the morning, and then she gets mad when I make her leave it at nighttime.
That's perfect.
Incredible. Love it. Cool.
That's wonderful. I love it. But yeah, so we'll see how
Yeah.
this shapes up, and we'll get maybe an update on like how the format's progressing for everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to see if White's still your pick for
Yeah.
strongest. I think it's very strong. I think the commons and uncommons, on the base of it, even when because they don't need to synergize as much. I think there are a lot of them that don't say just like bunnies.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
As opposed to like the commons and uncommons that are in for like red that say mouse, right?
Right.
I think that might just mean they're more universally powerful potentially.
Yeah.
That might mean that it's just the strongest color performing right now because it has that versatility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
It
I'm also
may have
wondering if
the commons that are a little less rigid and more flexible. That
Mhm.
might be part of it. Not that they're not powerful. It's just they might also just go in a bunch of different decks that would work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we'll
could be.
see.
Interesting.
I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to watch some cool drafts on both of your channels.
There's a non-zero chance
Yeah.
of that. So
Yeah,
if folks
non-zero.
did want to see, if folks did want to see us out there, let's go ahead and go around the horn. And if you do want to, dear listeners, if you do want to tune in to our live streams and see what we're up to, Headology is definitely more the draft enthusiast of all of us. If you really want to get your hands into some drafts, I highly recommend check her out first. The chance of it being draft much
Or
higher.
you could beg Ham
But,
and Carlo to draft.
Oh, it's
Sure.
I'm sure
possible.
they would oblige.
I mean, pester us enough in the chat. We'll do whatever you need. It's how streamers work, right? Anyway,
Listen, I love to draft.
I do too,
love to
actually.
draft.
I will be your
Yeah.
performing monkey.
It's a blast. Yeah, let's go on the horn. So, yeah, where can people find you out on the internet? So, yeah, Headology, what are you up to, and where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitch and YouTube, Headology and Magic. And then occasionally I'm an idiot on Twitter and Insta, and that's mainly it. Usually, I think I have a Facebook account too that I post all to as well. But
Mhm.
I'm working on that TikTok thing. We'll see. Carlo recommends it, and Ham recommends it, so we'll see whether I actually do any of that.
I'm not sure I still
Give it a
recommend it, but
shot.
anyway, there's no reason not to. It kind of, you might as well if you're already making content. But anyway,
Listen,
Yeah,
those
Headology
platforms are
MTG on
weird,
Twitter.
man.
yeah, platforms are
That's
weird.
the one.
It is what it is. Yep. Carlo, how about you, man? Where can people find you, and what can they expect when they get there?
Yeah, so CFavredo_Jr. on all the platforms. Stream live on Twitch at least 4 nights a week, sometimes 5, depends how frisky we're feeling. But mostly
Frisky.
doing standard content, especially with Bloomburrow out. We're playing lots of viewer brews all the time, making changes to the brews, taking them to the ladder, and see how we do. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Threads, if that's still a thing. All of those are the same handles. The content you see on like Instagram and TikTok, a lot of it is like Twitch clips. My largest view count thing was like literally me yelling at my opponent, gaining like over 400,000 or 4 million life or something like this. It's crazy. Welcome to Magic the Gathering Arena. But yeah, we're doing all that type of stuff over there, and want to check it out? Please do.
Heck yeah. Yeah, and I'm Graham. I go by Hambox42 on the places. I stream on Twitch Monday through Friday in the mornings, as well as doing the YouTube thing, and I'm doing the TikTok and the YouTube Shorts and the Twitters and all that jazz. So I'm either Hambox42 or at Hawks42 for some of the other smaller platforms, because I apparently didn't jump on it fast enough. Or I registered an account years ago and forgot the password. That's actually probably more likely to be the case, if
I've done
I'm
that.
completely honest. So. So yeah, fun stuff. So we have this new tradition here, this relatively new tradition of ending our podcast with kind of a quick question, kind of a getting to know you question of the host. And I got one. Given that we're talking about limited, I'm just curious, and this can be quick, but I'm wondering, what are your guys' favorite draft formats that you've ever played? Can be for any reason, and this isn't necessarily what you think is the best, but what is your favorite? I've got mine. I'm just curious, what are you guys? But I've also had time to think about this, so I'm just curious
Lead
what
off with
comes to
yours
mind.
then.
Well, for me, honestly, I don't have a long history with draft, and so I'm still relatively new to that particular game. I really enjoyed Neon Dynasty. There's something about ninjas took me back because I was around when Kamigawa first came out, and ninjas were one of the things that I tried to do, and so the fact that there's something about drafting ninjas, it felt good every time. And it was so funny too, because I was listening to podcasts and watching videos where people were talking about ninjas being underpowered and not all that great. And I was crushing people with them. It made me so happy. So I don't know. I have a soft spot for that one. Runner up has to go to Strixhaven though. That was also a lot of fun. There's something about looking at a draft deck and realizing like I've got 6 creatures and it's gonna be okay. Like that was super weird and I loved it. Yeah.
I would have to say my favorite from like it's like back in the day now. I know we're 2024.
Heck yeah.
Was Modern Masters 2015. And that was the set that brought back a lot of like OG Kamigawa cards. So like the Spear Arcane spells, stuff like that. And I guess my opinion is like a little biased because it was like the best performing like draft or sealed or just limited set in general that I done. Ended up going in the largest GP, so that was Grand Prix Vegas that year. I day 2'd at 8-1, playing a black-white Spear Arcane deck with long forgotten Gohei, Infinite Thief of Hopes, and like Waxmane Bakus and stuff like that. Because I started playing Magic in 8th edition. Kamigawa wasn't too far off that. We went through Mirrodin block and then Kamigawa, and I'm like, I get to draft all of these sweet cards that I drafted with when I was much younger. And it was just probably one of the most enjoyable sets that I experienced in some time. Also was like the Tarmogoyf controversy set, where do you take the foil Goyf or the non-foil Goyf? And now it doesn't matter because they're like $15.
but you take the foil Goyf. That's just the correct answer. Like
exactly.
Why is this a controversy? Why are we talking?
Yeah.
I don't think it was it foil versus. I think it was the foil Goyf versus something that was better for the deck.
Yeah, I think that was what it was. I think it was
that's what I heard.
I don't think
and the person took the foil Goyf because it was money. It was so much money at the time, and then they donated it.
Yeah, they like auctioned it off for charity and made.
I
remember
that.
It was wild. Yeah.
But that was a huge controversy. I was at that GP as well. That was a fun one.
Incredible.
I
love it.
It's really hard to pick a favorite these days. I would have said Cons in paper at a store.
Okay.
Recently, when Cons came back on Arena, I didn't have quite as much fun with it. So that could have just been like differences in play over the time, or differences of being a store with people versus the actual online format. But I really loved Cons at the time because it was so versatile in terms of the morph mechanic, allowing you to play things early and late and find value and do things. And it was unless you were playing the Warriors, it was a little bit of a slower format. The Black White Warrior deck was very fast, but it was a little bit of a slower format, and you could and the decisions really mattered. I love it. So I really liked that. Kamigawa was super sweet. That one's really up there. I think it's difficult to choose between them. I did really like Dominaria, the original Dominaria as well, because again, slower set, more decisions, and those decisions matter, and so that's where the skill comes into play, where you get the incremental advantage, and you just keep going from there. So there's a lot of crazy, awesome draft sets out there. It's really hard to pick an absolute favorite. But those would be my top 3 contenders currently.
I love it. Well, and
It can always
Dominaria,
although I don't know that a play booster set will ever be one of my absolute favorites.
I can believe
Are
that.
you sure?
Well, Dominaria 2018, I mean, for like the last 5 years, or I don't know, like prior to the play boosters, one talking point I heard all the time was, okay, is this set as good as Dominaria? Like that was the benchmark for like great draft sets for years. Yeah. So yeah, I think
It was super fun.
amazing.
So,
Good
yeah,
stuff.
that was that.
Last time Llanowar Elves was legal and standard was from that set. So and that'll be changing here
Been a while.
soon.
In November.
Oh yeah, because they're doing the foundations, right?
Foundations. Yep. It'll be bringing it back. Anyway, fun stuff. But that's another topic for another day, dear listeners. So yeah, thanks so much, guys, for coming in. This was an absolute blast. And so if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll be back next week. We're gonna be breaking down. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Whatever's happened. We'll see what kind of crazy scandals happen between now and then. I'm sure there'll be something. And we finally. Well, and I'm sure previews will start.
Well, have we talked about the Arena Direct boxes not arriving for people? Maybe we'll get into that.
Yeah, we have not actually. So yes, stay tuned, everybody. Ooh.
Yeah, spicy.
We get to end with a teaser. Let's go. I love it. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Later, everybody.
Later.
Cheers.